Welcome everyone. My name is Nikos, aka Sephir, and this is Out of the Box, EDH. In tonight's game, we have Daniel at the top left, playing his Goreclaw deck. This is an aggro deck that focuses in smashing phase with big creatures. At the top right, we have Kiwi and his 9th Doctor and Susan Foreman pair. This is a brew that focuses in multiplying counters and sacrificing tokens. At the bottom right, I am playing my Phelddagrif list. This is a deck that punishes people for having too many creatures with a life gain sub-theme. Finally, at the bottom left, we have Phelddagrif and his Marneus Calgar deck. This is a tokens matter deck, focusing in abusing its commander's card draw as much as possible. Without further ado, let's move to our game. Daniel starts the game with a forest and casts a Basilisk Collar. He passes. Kiwi plays a tapped Path of Ancestry and passes. I am playing an Exotic Orchard and I immediately tap it to suspend a Search for Tomorrow. I pass. Hello Kyrian also plays a Path of Ancestry tapped and passes. Daniel plays another forest and casts the fabled turn 2 Soul Ring. He follows it with a Spinner of Souls. He passes after that. Kiwi plays an untapped Stomping Ground and takes 2 damage. He casts one of his commanders, Susan Foreman. He passes. On my upkeep, I remove a time counter from my Search for Tomorrow. I play an island for turn and I cast a Hard Bristle Bandit. I pass. Hello Kyrian plays a tapped Dismal Backwater. He gains 1 life and passes. Daniel plays a Rogue's Passage as his land for turn. He then casts an Up the Beanstalk and he draws a card. He equips his Spider with Basilisk Collar, giving it lifelink and death touch, and moves to combat. He attacks Hello Kyrian with the Spinner for 4 damage. Hello Kyrian takes it and Daniel gains 4 life. He passes. Kiwi plays a tapped Frontier Bivouac. He casts an Invigorating Hot Spring and passes. On my upkeep, I remove the last counter from Search for Tomorrow. I search for a plains and put it in play. I play a Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, having all lands into play be forests as well. I cast a life tap, basically making me gain a life whenever an opponent of mine taps a land. I follow it with a Soul Warden and a Planar Guide. Planar Guide entering triggers Soul Warden and I gain 1 life. I pass the turn after that. Hello Kyrian plays a Swamp and taps out for a Commander's Fear. I gain 3 life because of life tap. He passes. Daniel plays a Forest and immediately plays a Cross and Grip, targeting the life tap. I gain 1 life from his tapped Forest and life tap gets destroyed. He moves to combat and attacks me with his Spider. I choose not to block, I take 4 damage and he gains 4 life. He passes to Kiwi. Kiwi plays an Escape Tunnel and casts a Crystalline Crawler. It enters with 3+1/+1 counters. Soul Warden triggers and I gain a life. Kiwi immediately moves a counter from the Invigorating Hot Springs to the Crawler. He removes 3 counters from Crawler for 3 mana and casts a Blasting Station. He passes after that. On my turn, I cast my commander, Phelddagrif. Soul Warden triggers and I gain a life. I tap my Hard Bristle Bandit for a green and I use Phelddagrif's ability to gift a 1/1 Hippo token to Daniel. However, because gifting hippos without the proper papers is a crime, poaching and all that, Hard Bristle Bandit will untap. Soul Warden triggers from the hippo and I gain a life. I pass. Hello Kyrian plays a Plains as his land for turn and immediately casts his commander, Marneus Calgar. He scries 1 from Path of Ancestry and chooses to leave the card on top. With his commander still on the stack, I tap my Hard Bristle Bandit and gift him a hippo with my Phelddagrif. Bandit untaps and I gain a life from Soul Warden. Marneus Calgar resolves and Hello Kyrian passes after that. Daniel plays a tapped Mirage Mesa, choosing green. He plays his commander, Goreclaw, Terror of Qual Sisma. He moves to combat and, once more, attacks me with the Spider. I take the hit for 4 damage and Daniel gains 4 life. At the end of his turn, I tap my Hard Bristle Bandit and gift him a hippo with my Phelddagrif. Bandit taps and I gain a life from Soul Warden. Also, Kiwi taps his Crystalline Crawler, giving it a +1/+1 counter. Daniel passes. Kiwi plays a land for turn and casts a Termagant Swarm, where X equals 5 and draws a card from its Ferocious ability. He moves a counter from the Invigorating Hot Springs to the Crystalline Crawler. He moves to combat and attacks the Hasty due to the Invigorating Hot Springs Swarm to Daniel. Daniel blocks it with a hippo. He passes. On my turn, I play a tapped Balaged Sanctuary. I gift a hippo to Helokirian. My bandit untaps, Helokirian draws a card from his commander, and I gain a life from Soul Warden. I pass. Helokirian plays an island and casts a Wisp Drinker Vampire. He passes. Daniel equips Goreclaw with Basilisk Collar, giving the bear lifelink and death touch. He moves to combat, hitting me for 5 commander damage. I take the hit and he gains 5 life. After combat, he casts a Surak, the Hand Caller, and this time I finally remember to gain a life from my Soul Warden from a creature my opponents played. At the end of his turn, Kiwi taps his Crystalline Crawler and puts another +1/+1 counter on it. I also gift Daniel a hippo and gain 1 life from Soul Warden. He passes. Kiwi plays a tapped Temple of Abandon as his land for turn. He scries 1 and chooses to keep the card on top. He casts a Scary Oak. In response to that, I cast a Force of Vigor, targeting Kiwi's Blasting Station and Daniel's Up the Beanstalk. Kiwi responds by sacrificing his Swarm to the Blasting Station, targeting my Soul Warden and creating 5/1/1 Tyranids. I gain 5 life from Soul Warden and then Soul Warden dies. Blasting Station and Up the Beanstalk get destroyed and Scary Oak resolves. He moves a counter from Invigorating Hot Springs to the Oak and he creates a 1/1 Squirrel token. He then casts a Goblin Bombardment. At Kiwi's end step, Daniel casts an Archdruid's Charm and chooses to put a +1/+1 counter on his commander and deal 5 damage to my Planar Guide. Planar Guide dies and Kiwi passes the turn to me. On my turn, I cast a Defense of the Heart and pass. Helokirian plays a Sunken Hollow and casts a Rabble Rousing. He hideaways 5 with its GTB. He moves to combat and attacks me with Marneus Calgar and the 2 hippos and Kiwi with a vampire. Rabble Rousing triggers and Helokirian creates 4/1/1 citizens, draining everyone for 4 life with his vampire. He draws a card from his commander. I block Marneus Calgar with my hippo and we both take the rest of the damage. He passes. On his turn, Daniel casts Preposterous Proportions, giving all his creatures vigilance and +10/+10. Kiwi responds by sacrificing his squirrel and one of his Tyranids to the bombardment to kill both of Daniel's hippos. Preposterous Proportions resolves. He attacks Kiwi with Goreclaw for 16 commander damage, Helokirian with Surak for 16 damage, and me with his spider for 15 damage. We all take the hit, and Daniel gains 16 life from Basilisk Collar. At the end of his turn, Kiwi taps Crystalline Crawler and adds a +1/+1 counter on it. Daniel passes. Kiwi plays a forest and casts Ulast, the Hate Seed. It enters with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. Scary Oak's Evolve triggers and it gets another +1/+1 and it creates a 1/1 Squirrel. He passes to me. On my upkeep, Defense of the Heart triggers. It gets sacrificed and I search my library for 2 creatures and put them in play. I bring an Explume Ancient that triples my mana and an Oriok Champion. I cast a Marina Vendrell's Grimoire, basically giving me no maximum hand size, making me draw cards whenever I gain life, discard whenever I lose life, and losing the game if I have 0 cards in hand. On each ETB, I draw 5 cards. With 4 mana, I cast a Dingu Staff. In response to Dingu Staff, Kiwi sacrifices all his remaining Tyranids and Squirrels to his Goblin Bombardment, targeting the next Plume Ancient. I respond to that by gifting 6 hippos to Daniel. I gain 6 life from Oriok Champion and draw 6 cards from the Grimoire. Nyx Bloom Ancient dies and Dingu Staff resolves. I cast a Sakura Tri-Belter. I gain a life from Warrior Champion and draw a card from the Grimoire. I attempt to cast a Teferi's Protection. Kiwi counters it with a repulsive mutation for X equals 2, also attempting to put 2 counters on his Oak. I respond by exiling the Scary Oak with a Swords to Plowshares. Kiwi gains 3 life and Teferi's Protection gets countered. This was a misplay, since the mutation should have fizzled without a target, but we missed that. Without maximum hand size, I pass the turn. Helokirian moves straight to combat and attacks Daniel with everything. Rabble-rousing triggers and he creates 8 1/1 citizens. Both his commander, his vampire and my champion trigger, but my creature resolves first. I gain 8 life with champion and draw 8 cards with Grimoire, and then me, Daniel and Kiwi lose 8 life while Helokirian gains 8. I discard 8 cards from the Grimoire and Helokirian draws a card from Marneus Calgar. Before blocks, he casts his hideaway card, an Hour of Reckoning. Kiwi responds by removing all counters from Ulast and creates 6 Saprolings. But Helokirian responds with a Deny the Witch, countering the ability and dealing enough damage to Kiwi to kill him. I also respond by sacrificing my Sakura Tri-Belter, searching my library for an island and putting it in play, and also taking 2 damage from the Dingu Staff and discarding 2 cards from the Grimoire. Hour of Reckoning resolves, and all non-token creatures get destroyed. Dingu Staff deals 6 damage to Daniel, 4 damage to Helokirian, and 6 damage to me, while I also discard 6 cards to the Grimoire, leaving me with just 3 cards in hand. Very close to death by Grimoire. Daniel decides to block with all his hippos, and from the tokens dying, Dingu Staff deals another 12 damage to him and to Helokirian. He passes. Daniel casts a Kogla, the Titan Ape. When Kogla enters, he kills one of Helokirian's tokens and Dingu Staff deals 2 damage on him. Daniel then equips Kogla with the Basilisk Collar and passes. I play a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as my land for turn, and I immediately cast my top deck, which is the One Ring. When the One Ring enters, it grants me protection from everything until my next turn. I tap the One Ring, put a counter on it, and draw a card. I cast a Soul Ring, and this gives me the exact mana I need to cast a Seedborn Muse. I pass the turn. On Helokirian's untap step, I also untap my permanents thanks to Seedborn Muse. He plays a For the Emperor, giving all his creatures +2/+2, Vigilance, and more importantly, Lifelink until end of turn. He moves to combat and attacks Daniel with his entire army. Rabble-rousing triggers and he creates another 7 1/1 tokens. Daniel blocks and kills one of the attacking tokens with his giant gorilla. He takes 18 damage from the rest of the army, gains 7 life from Kogla's lifelink, while Helokirian will gain 21 life and take just 2 damage from the Dingu Staff and the dying token. I also tap my One Ring, put a counter on it and draw 2 cards, while Kiwi showcases his artistic side with a gorgeous hippo token. Helokirian passes. On Daniel's upkeep, Seedborn Muse also untaps my permanents. He casts a Stonehoof Chieftain and moves to combat. He attacks Helokirian with Kogla. Kogla triggers and Daniel chooses to destroy Rabble-rousing. Helokirian blocks the ape with a citizen. Daniel gains 7 life from Basilisk Collar and Helokirian takes 2 damage from Dingu Staff. At the end of Daniel's turn, I tap my One Ring and put a counter on it and draw 3 cards. I cast a Beast Within, targeting Marina Vendrell's Grimoire. Grimoire gets destroyed and I create a 3/3 beast. At the beginning of my turn, I lose 3 life from the One Ring. I play a tapped Spara's Headquarters. I move to combat and attack Daniel with my beast. He blocks it with Stonehoof Chieftain. The beast dies and I take 2 damage from Dingu Staff. After combat, I cast Pendrell Mists. I then tap my One Ring to put a 4th counter on it and draw 4 cards. I then recast my commander, Phelddagrif. I pass, discarding 2 hand size. On Helokirian's turn, Seedborn Muse also untaps my permanents. With the Pendrell Mist trigger on the stack, he casts Tamillo's Completion, targeting the Dingu Staff. In response, I put a 5th counter on the One Ring and draw 5 cards. Completion resolves and Dingu Staff loses all its abilities. He decides not to pay for any of his creature tokens and they all die. He plays a Rumor Gatherer and passes. At the end of his turn, I gift him 7 hippos. On Daniel's turn, Seedborn Muse untaps all my permanents. He chooses to pay for both his creatures for the Pendrell Mist's costs. He plays a Hivespine Wolverine, choosing to fight Seedborn Muse. In response, I tap my One Ring to put another token on it and draw 6 cards. Then, Seedborn Muse dies. This was another misplay, since Hivespine Wolverine fights only creature tokens, but we also missed it. It didn't affect the game though. Daniel moves to combat and attacks me with both Kogla and Stonehoof Chieftain. On attack, Kogla triggers and targets my Soul Ring. I tap it for 2 mana and it gets destroyed. Before blocks, I flash in a Mantle of Leadership, targeting my Phelddagrif. It resolves, and then I gift 3 hippos to Daniel, buffing my commander by a total +6/+6. Phelddagrif blocks the Chieftain, and I take 7 damage from Kogla. After that, Daniel passes to me. On my upkeep, I lose 6 life from the One Ring, and I pay the Pendrell Mist tax for Phelddagrif. I tap the One Ring to put another counter on it and draw 7 cards. I cast a Mana Reflection, doubling my mana. I cast a Sink into Stupor to Tamillo's Completion, freeing my Dingu Staff. I cast a Leyline of Singularity that turns every non-land permanent into legendary. Legendary rules trigger. Hello Kyrian sacrifices 6 and Daniel 2 hippos, taking 12 and 4 damage respectively from Dingu Staff. I cast an Eternal Witness and take the Seedborn Muse back to my hand. I recast Seedborn Muse. With my final mana, I give 2 life to Daniel and my Phelddagrif gains flying. I move to combat and I attack him for 8 commander damage. I pass, discarding to hand size. On Hello Kyrian's untap step, Seedborn untaps all my permanents. On his upkeep, I attempt to gift him 22 hippos. He attempts to recast Tamillo's Completion to the Dingu Staff, but I counter it with an offer you can't refuse. With each hippo gifted, he scries 1 with his Rumor Gatherer, and then the hippo dies due to the legendary rule, triggering Dingu Staff and dealing 2 damage to Hello Kyrian. He manages to scry 6 times with his Rumor Gatherer before finally dying to the staff triggers. We move to Daniel's turn, and I untap my permanents alongside him. I have more than enough mana to also gift him enough hippo tokens that will die due to the legendary rule and trigger the Dingu Staff, dealing him 2 damage for each hippo and killing him, giving me the victory. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.